Hey YouTube, it's Pump. Today I'm going to be going over an introduction to World of Warcraft and all the things you should know, whether you've played before or not. Despite the community having a generally grim outlook on the game, I think that WoW has been showing a lot of good signs for the future, and I'll cover a specific design outlook that I like at the end of the video. Here's a quick table of contents on what I'll be going over. The first thing you're going to see when you open the game is a server selection screen. You want to ask any friends you have what server they're on so you can join the same guild as them. In an upcoming patch, gold will be transferable between all servers, but you still want to be on the same server as your friends for guild reasons. So I currently play on Tichondrius, so we're going to log in here and I'm going to show you the character creation screen and what that kind of looks like. So when making a character, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind. The race you select does affect your damage in some minor way. The biggest difference, I think, between a race is like 1% damage, which in the end game that does matter, but for the majority of the player base, I just suggest making whatever you think looks cool. So I'm just going to make a random dwarf paladin, sure. And we're going to hit customize. I'm just going to hit randomize on everything, because why not? And then here we go. I'm a dwarf paladin named Goomerang or something. I would suggest selecting Exile's Reach on every single character. It's the most efficient, and it also gives you a good rundown on how to play your class starting out. It at least gives you a brief introduction. So we're going to load in here, and then I'll show you what's up.
You are a soldier of the Noble Alliance.
Recruit, step forward. We're approaching the island.
So I'm going to have way more add-ons than you guys will. So I'm going to hit reload on my UI really quick. So your game's going to look similar to this. Your UI is going to be different. It still takes my profile from my other character and puts it down here. But your UI should look something like this. So I suggest everybody play through this tutorial. You can play free up until level 20. So if you want to try out the game and just see what it looks like, I highly suggest doing this and just seeing if you like the game. You get to play at least a little bit after this tutorial and walk through this little island, but it's very straightforward. So you just take all the quests on the island, do them all, yada yada, and you'll hit level 10, and you get shown a dungeon at the very end. So I actually switched over to a level 10 character that has already completed Exile's Reach. So I quickly want to go over keybinds and sort of your efficiency for how you should build your own keybinds and kind of what you should do if you've never played before. So by default, I think you move with WASD, so that's completely fine to keep. In current WoW, the UI is extremely customizable, so you can add buffs and debuff bars, and I highly suggest playing around with the screen and just seeing sort of what you want to do. So I can make this bar larger, for example, or I can make it a square, or I can move it up here if I wanted. Like, the current UI that they implemented at the start of Dragonflight is extremely advanced, and I think it sort of makes, or it's at least attempting to get rid of Elv UI and Voodoo and all those kind of UI add-ons that you may be used to completely. And I honestly don't use Elv UI anymore. I moved and customized my own UI just from the default WoW client and made it how I like it. So moving back to this, I'm just going to save and exit really quick and go back to what I had. So the biggest suggestion I think I can have for you guys is to try and keep like keybinds that you use often on common keybinds like 1, 2, 3, 4. So for all my classes, I do my rotation, or at least try to do my rotation in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I do defensives on shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. And then I move down for more uncommon abilities, like stuff like a purge or something I might not use that often. I usually put those at the bottom of my keyboard on like Z, X, C, and those and so on. So I always put kick on shift 2, like, but you should honestly do whatever you think is most comfortable for yourself. If you have an MMO mouse, then your keybinding situation could be completely different. I only have 2 buttons on the side of my mouse, so I can't keybind a bunch there, but I could totally see if that's comfortable for somebody that they put a bunch of buttons on their mouse and they just play that way. So yeah, it depends a lot on your computer setup and what your mouse allows, but at the end of the day, just do whatever you find comfortable. And if you're lost, I suggest looking up a specific keybind tutorial for your class. It can depend on how many buttons your class has and your class's rotation and all that stuff. So now I want to go over leveling, and you have two primary options when leveling a character. So at the time of this video, there's actually a Winds of Sanctuary buff until the new patch comes out, which is July 12th, I believe, so another 2 weeks-ish. But aside from that, you have two options. You have the fun route or the efficient route. So if you're trying to level for fun and maybe learn your class a bit, you can pick any one of these campaigns from Chromie. So in Orgrimmar, Chromie is located right here. In Alliance, I believe she's at the top right of Stormwind. But if you're trying to be efficient, then you would go to Warlords of Draenor. This is the most efficient zone by far, just because of how many quest completions you get here. But I honestly suggest picking any one of these that seems interesting to you, and maybe doing some dungeons during it, because I think dungeons are a perfect way to learn your class and learn how to play your class while leveling. So now we are into the add-ons section. I'm going to sort this into two categories. There's going to be essential add-ons that I think that you need, in my opinion, and then there's going to be a bunch of fluff add-ons that I use personally, but I wouldn't say they're necessary by any means. So I'm going to throw my 6 core add-ons on screen now. Feel free to just skip around if you don't want to hear the explanations, and you just go install them. But starting out, we have Bigwigs. So what Bigwigs does is it tells you when you should be scared at any point in a dungeon or in raid. So if I create a test bar here, you can see the test is down here, but it tells you when boss abilities are happening and when you should be scared. So when there's 10 seconds or less, my bars show up right here, and I know when a certain mechanic is coming on a boss so that you could learn much quicker when to be scared, essentially. So that's Bigwigs. Definitely necessary in the current state. And there isn't another option. You could have deadly boss mods, but Bigwigs is what most people use nowadays. It's more frequently updated, and I think it's better in its current state. Number 2, we're going to move on to Details. Details tracks damage done and shows you kind of how you can improve as a player while in-game. It tracks all sorts of stuff that's unnecessary that you'll never look at, but the main things you'll be tracking is like healing done and damage done. Then we move on to weak auras. Weak auras still remain as one of the strongest things about the game. So as you can see, I have a whole bunch of trackers showing me like when I can buff my teammates, when I need to repair my character, when my little Sun King's Blessing proc comes up, my tier set. You track just about everything with weak auras, and it is definitely necessary to have this so you can track your character and be efficient. Not every class will use class-specific weak auras. Some you could just roll your face into, like maybe BM Hunter, no flame, but this is also especially useful for specific bosses that Bigwigs won't tell you where to go or what to do. Some weak aura packs for bosses will tell you when to defensive, and all sorts of important stuff for fights. Number 4, we move on to Plater. This is just my nameplates. I use the default nameplate system, but there are tons of add-ons for nameplates and kind of what enemies look like. So here's an example of what my nameplate looks like. It's just this rectangle bar on screen. That's what I've been playing with all along, so that's what I'm used to. But there's a couple other add-ons for nameplates. You don't have to necessarily use Plater. The next add-on is Raider.io. Raider.io will tell you, let's try and find some random person here in Valdrak and see if they have. So this guy, for example, Mr. Rex, he's done a 20 Oldman, and he's done 6 20s this season. So if you're ever making Mythic Plus keys and you want to see how good your teammates are, this is pretty much essential so you can make a good team for whatever content you're doing. So if you're doing 20s, then you want to make sure that people have done around 20s at least, so you aren't just accepting random people that might have no experience in what you're doing. And then the last add-on I would say is necessary is CurseForge. CurseForge isn't actually an add-on in-game itself. It is an external app, but it will automatically update your add-ons whenever there are updates that happen. So you just keep CurseForge on in the background, and then it will tell you when there's an update. You just hit update all, and that's it. Your add-ons will get updated in game. So that way you aren't falling out of date for whatever bigwigs updates come out or whatever. Moving on to the optional add-ons. These are add-ons that I think are really, really helpful, but they are not necessary by any means to just play the game. Here's my list of my 10 add-ons that I use personally, and feel free to pause and read through them. Now let's move on to guilds, something that's extremely important for playing the game however you want to play it. Finding a guild that fits what you want to do in game is key, and I'll go through every type of player and how they can go about finding a guild. If you have no plans of raiding, then finding a social guild that you vibe with is really important. If you're wanting to try out raiding, I suggest queuing looking for raid first and seeing the raid for the first time, and then you can look for a guild at normal. So to queue LFR, you just go to Raid Finder here in the Dungeons and Raids, and if you want to try and pug, you can go to Raids Dragonflight, and then you could look for normal or heroic, and there's groups pretty much all the time, no matter what time of day you're on. But these can be very good or very bad. If you're in a guild, you'll find that it's a lot more organized and that you should pretty much avoid these at all costs, but different experiences for different players. So when you start to raid at Heroic and Mythic, this requires guilds with set schedules, and this is the biggest quote-unquote downside about WoW, is that it is a social game at its highest level. Mythic Plus requires 5 people, and raiding requires 20 people at Mythic, and around at least 10 people at Heroic. So you have to interact with people. That's why finding a guild that you vibe with is extremely important. So now I want to go over the 4 main recruitment ways that you can find a guild, or if you have a group of friends and you want to try and make a guild, how you can post your own guild there and see if you can recruit some people. So I'm going to throw the list of 4 on screen now. The first one that I think is good for single recruitment is Raider IO. This shows your IO and your current raid status when you go to the recruitment page. I'll throw a screenshot on now. The second one is the WoW Recruitment Discord. This is extremely good for people in groups wanting to find a guild together, and for guilds at the highest level recruiting. I think that the WoW Recruitment Discord is the most active, but I can't really tell how active Guilds of WoW or the Warcraft Logs recruitment area is. Number 3 is Guilds of WoW. If you're making posts on all of the other 2 recruitment sites, then you might as well make it on Guilds of WoW and WoW Logs just to see if guilds are checking those. And then the last one is the Warcraft Logs recruitment, which is pretty new. I think it came out within this year. So now I want to quickly move on to gearing. Gearing is the best it has ever been in World of Warcraft, in my opinion. It feels the easiest to gear. You get rewarded for every content you do. The only limiter is, of course, weekly Vault for the best in slot items, but Vault at its best can be 447, which I have a couple pieces, but when you upgrade Heroic Track, which comes from Heroic and Mythic Plus, it goes to 441. So you're only missing out on like 6 eye levels if you're min-maxing, and that's nothing in the big picture. So you could go from literally a fresh 70 to 441 on an alt within a week. And that's not even outrageous to do anymore. Depending on whatever content you're doing, you will get these little crests and all these crest fragments, so you got to make all the crests, but what these crests do essentially is you just upgrade a piece of gear that you haven't upgraded before. So if you've never gotten, I'm just going to use my boots as an example. So if I had never gotten 434 boots before, this would take a crest to upgrade. But since I already have these at 441, it just costs flight stones to upgrade. So it's free, essentially. These flight stones are a joke currency. You just get them from whatever you're doing in the game. So yeah. This also transfers to alts. If you make an alt character, it just takes flight stones to upgrade whatever pieces of gear you get. So I think this system is great, and it's confirmed to be coming next patch. Now I want to go over content to do in-game as of right now. World of Warcraft always has this cycle of raiding and Mythic Plus being the primary things you should do in-game, because playing with your friends and pushing the hardest content always feels like the most fun. And high-end raiding is one of the most rewarding things about World of Warcraft, when you complete something really hard to do with a group of your friends. I'm going to throw a list on screen now of the 6 things that I think most players participate in. Number 1 is definitely raiding. There's no other feeling in video games in general, like killing a really hard mythic boss. Nothing has ever come close to it in any other game I've played. That's one of the primary reasons I honestly play WoW is for raiding and the feeling of killing a boss that's really difficult. Number 2 is going to be Mythic Plus. I know that this can get repetitive for some people. If you're doing your weekly 20s for vaults, then you just think it's a chore, but pushing Mythic Plus is extremely fun and learning what's hard about what specific dungeon. Number 3 is going to be Completionist. This is everything like mount collecting, quests, transmog, all that sort of stuff. There is a surprising amount of people that love being Completionist in WoW, including myself, which I'm almost at 500 mounts. If we go to collection mounts, here I am. I'm at 485, and I've been playing WoW since BFA. So I love being Completionist. It's what I do in lulls of World of Warcraft when like my guild isn't pushing raiding anymore or whatever. It's still really fun to be Completionist in this game. Number 4 is gold farming. This is stuff like alt armies, professions, selling services, like selling raid slots. If you sell heroic, you can make a bunch of gold doing that. If you're just pretty good at the game, you don't even have to be top of the line. All that sort of stuff for gold farming is really fun, and it's pretty hard to get into, if I'm being honest. Learning TSM is a pain in the butt, but if you're just going to sell like services, like if you look in trade chat right now, there's people selling keys, people selling crest crafting, all that sort of stuff. Like these guys are making gold just by pasting their thing in chat and getting crafting orders. Number 5 is going to be leveling alts. I'm doing that bunch of that right now, but it is great to do until July 12th of 2023 because there's this Winds of Sanctuary buff, which is increasing all XP by 50%, which is a big number. And then number 6 I threw in there kind of as a joke, but it is very active, and that is social events, which is stuff like Goldshire. The last thing I wanted to cover is game design and sort of all the green flags that I've seen recently that show me that WoW is going to be around for a long time and that they are listening to the player base. So number 1 is that they acknowledged things that are bad for the long-term health of the game. This is things like Rune of Power being removed for Mage. I think this is a bad design in general, and it's going to be removed soon. I know this is very, very specific to Mage, but aside from that, I think that the process of making servers and factions matter less. It just all goes to show that they're removing the outdated systems of the game that feel more like a chore than part of the actual game. Horde and Alliance are able to raid together now, and soon gold will be tradable between all servers, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. Number 2 is going to be gearing is, I think, the most convenient it's ever been. Gearing an alt is easy, and gearing mains feels rewarding and good with the crest upgrading system. I want to close this off by saying not to listen to the doomer content about the game. I'll throw a screenshot on screen now, and I know we've seen a lot of popular people in the community kind of just dooming on WoW, and I think a lot of it's just clickbaity and trying to get your attention about it. Every player will have different opinions about the game depending on the level of content they're doing, but for an average gamer, I think that this game is perfect in its current state, and I really like World of Warcraft, and it's going to remain my main game for a long time. That'll do it for this video. If you guys like this video or have any comments about playing the game as a beginner or add-ons that you think I missed in this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below and help out other people. If you would like to further support my content, feel free to check out my Patreon, where I do individual log reviews for any class. Shout out to my supporters Villain and Gene, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.